Hello, this is Jay Mitchell, and we are back with another episode of the Libertarian Uncensored podcast, going over all the posts on the Libertarian Uncensored subreddit. Let's get right into it. So first we have Biden unveils final $2.5 billion security aid package for Ukraine from Ground News by Doctor Who 07. And yeah, I personally don't think we should be throwing money at Ukraine and Israel and all the other foreign entanglements that we are currently in. But, the government's going to justify what justifies. I can only hope Trump turns the money faucet off for Ukraine, but I don't know. I have serious doubts that he's going to. And regardless, he's definitely going to pump up the money faucet for Israel as well. So it's still going to be going overseas regardless. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Wyoming governor approves $100 million sale of state land 1 square mile to join Grand Teton National Park from CBSNews.com by Frosty Sloman. And I think that's just selling state government land to the federal government. So I personally think instead of selling land between governments, they should be selling between private enterprise instead. I think they should be privatizing the land rather than federalizing it. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Libertarians don't want the state to run everything. We want private individuals to control their own destiny, and that's why I think it should have gone to maybe ranching or something like that. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have the First Lady has backtracked for President Elon again from Ragnar OKXG, and that's crosswords from the Leopards Ate My Face subreddit. And that's a tweet from the ACYN account, ACYN. Reporter, why do you change your mind on H-1B visas? Trump, I didn't change my mind. I always thought we have to have the most competent people in our country. We need competent people. We need smart people coming into our country. We need a lot of people coming in. We're just going to have jobs like we've never had before. And yeah, I think it's interesting how they said, "Oh, Elon bought the people." A lot of people on the left said Elon's bought Twitter. Now it's collapsing, but it also has made him the secret shadow president. So it's just another example of how the enemy's both strong and weak. Regardless, if Trump wants to support Elon's position, I think he should be able to do so. I personally agree with Elon's position of having high-skilled workers come over rather than thugs and criminals, and regardless of their skin color. And yeah, if people want to be against that, though, I think they should be able to do so. And increasingly, I have noticed Elon pushing for censorship of those who are against his position on H-1B visas, and I don't think that's very libertarian. But regardless, I definitely do think the program should be cut back a little, maybe fixed a little, because it's ridiculously easy right now for it to be abused. You can get low skilled workers through the program right now, and I think it should only be reserved for high skilled workers. Although I guess skill is very much a subjective quantity when it comes to labor, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Trump is right on H-1B visas from Lemon Limelight, and they said from the Wall Street Journal editorial, Trump is right on H-1B visas, emphasis added, Donald Trump is right to endorse the value of H-1B visas. The debate broke out last week on social media as Mr. Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy defended the legal high-skill H-1B visa program from critics who want to sharply reduce even legal immigration. Work visas are legal programs that help to fill labor needs in the U.S. economy. Unlike legal migration, these programs don't offend the rule of law or risk importing criminals. Mr. Trump's position isn't surprising, since he has often said he favors skilled immigration. In June, he told a podcast with Silicon Valley pundits that if anybody graduates from college, you go there for 2 years or 4 years, you graduate, you get a doctorate degree from college, you should be able to stay in this country. Many of those foreign graduates who remain in the U.S. do so under H-1B visas, which are sponsored by companies. The program is small, capped at $85,000 a year, and it's reached its quota every year since 2004. For fiscal 2025, the H-1B requests exceed the limit by 5 times. Some 30,000 employers gained approval through a lottery system for at least one H-1B applicant in fiscal 2024, which attested the broad demand. The U.S. jobless rate for computer and math jobs was 2.5%, 2% for architecture and engineering in November 2024. Some critics say H-1B visas let companies pay less than U.S. workers earn, but under the law, employers must pay H-1B visa holders the higher of the prevailing wage or actual wage paid to comparable U.S. workers. The average annual salary for an H-1B visa holder in 2023 for computer-related jobs was $442,000, according to U.S. immigration data. This is an exploitation of cheap labor. The U.S. is in a global competition for economic and technological leadership, and U.S. firms need the best talent. Studies show that when applicants are denied H-1Bs, they go abroad. There have been some abuses in the H-1B program, but there are no reason to shrink or eliminate it. U.S. companies find it crucial to compete, and one way to reduce illegal immigration is to allow for more legal pathways to meet the U.S. needs of the U.S. economy. Some conservatives want to define nationalism solely by geography and ethnicity, but the U.S. is fried because it has invited talented newcomers from many nations who add to the U.S. strength and vitality. This is intelligent nationalism of the kind we assume Mr. Trump wants. And I guess I would agree with that. I personally don't think there should be any immigration restrictions whatsoever, but that's how the system works currently. So I do think H-1B is a fair system, and I agree that it has potential to be abused, but ultimately I think what we have now is fine. I personally might shrink it a little from like 85,000 to maybe like 50,000, making only the top of the top. But yeah, I think personally what we have now is relatively decent, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Because yeah. Then we have Pornhub is banned now covers more than a third of U.S. states, from independent.co.uk by Dr. 07. And yeah, I think if I've talked about this before, but Pornhub wants to censor itself to protest age verification laws, I think they should be able to do so. I personally don't think the state should have age verification laws. I think parents should be watching what their kids are doing on the internet rather than having the state enforce stuff like age verification laws. And yeah, I think it's important that yeah, I personally don't care that much for porn. I think it's a lot like smoking. It's not good for you, but if you want to do it, you should be able to do so. But yeah, use whatever websites you want. I'm sure there's tons of other porn sites that are still going to be operating in the states that Pornhub is self-censored is from, as they try to work to implement age verification laws. And even then, I don't know if age verification laws are going to be seen as constitutional in the long run. So, but I guess we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have soldier shot in the head before Cybertruck exploded outside Trump's Las Vegas hotel, officials say, from APnews.com by Swamp Yankee Dan. And yeah, there's something that strikes me as very fishy about that. And the New Orleans car ramming attack as well. And now both of them had ties to Fort Bragg. Now they call it Fort Liberty because, Bragg was a Confederate, but that's another issue. But, yeah, I personally think, it's interesting how a lot of these people tend to have ties to the military. I'm kind of a conspiracy theorist, I would say. So I might think, maybe the military is potentially training people to do attacks like this in order to enhance its own power, just like, or maybe it's the deep state, the FBI, CIA, and all them. That's why, you always have to question, why are people doing these attacks? And I definitely think they could all be psyops in order to give the government and the deep state more power. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have some free ebooks explaining the authoritarian mindset from theauthoritarians.org by CH4 Locks. And they added, I've only skimmed some of these so far, but thought others here might find them interesting too. And I think that it's interesting how they're pretty much all the books are anti-Trump authoritarianism, but none of them are anti-blue authoritarianism, because it's people only care about the authoritarianism of the other side. They don't care about the authoritarianism on their team. They're fine with blue authoritarianism, but when it's red authoritarianism, they suddenly think it's the worst thing ever. And yeah, it just goes to show you that people aren't principled. They'll just justify whatever their branch of the Uniparty does, rather than justify their branch of whatever the Uniparty does, rather than hold them accountable. That's the words I was looking for there. Then we have police killed more people this year than any other year on record, killing 3.4 people per day nationwide. And that's that's from CH4 Locks, and that's crossovers from the March Against Nazis subreddit. And yeah, I personally don't think the state should be killing people like that. If it were up to me, we'd have privatized police that aren't beholden to the state, but rather private enterprise in the free market. And yeah, that's how I would enforce law, or that, or local militia. But yeah, that's why I personally don't care for the police. I think it's interesting how people make such a big deal about elections, but the people who end up using the government's monopoly on force aren't elected. I think if it were up to me, we should be electing police officers who actually enforce the law rather than legislators who actively make it. And that's my thoughts on that issue. But regardless, I'm pretty anti-election in the first place. I think elections are inherently forced collectivism. What we need is voluntary collectivism rather than forced collectivism. Then we have U.S. military service's strongest predictor of carrying out extremist violence from TheIntercept.com by Lemon Limelight. And yeah, as I said earlier, could that be that they're actually training them to commit extremist violence in order to enhance their own power? I guess we'll have to wait and see. People always say, "Oh, the government wouldn't do that," but if you look at a lot of stuff that the government's done over there, like MK Ultra or Operation Northwoods or Ruby Ridge or Waco, the government will justify whatever it wants to, and the conspiracy theorists often turn out to be right more than not. Then we have H1B fucks the free market from Ragnar OKXG, and that's a tweet from Bernie Sanders. Elon Musk is wrong. The main function of the H1B visa program is not to hire the best and the brightest, but to rather replace good-paying American jobs with low-wage indentured servants from abroad. The cheaper the labor they hire, the more money the billionaires make. And I guess I can see the argument for that. I used to be a Bernie supporter, but I started disagreeing with him on economics. I personally think, if they do want to import, if the billionaires do want to import cheap labor, I think they should be able to do so. But it's important to for the skilled labor to be differentiated from unskilled labor. A lot of people these days, they say, oh, skilled labor is all subjective, but manufacturing supercomputers is much different than packing avocados, even if you pack avocados in a very stylish way. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Ohio will charge up to $750 for a public police video from News5Cleveland.com by P-Tom13. That's crosspost from the Bad Cop No Donut subreddit. And yeah, I personally think all video of government should be free in order for public transparency, but ultimately the state can enforce whatever laws it wants, and sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have federal courts won't refer Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas to Attorney General over ethics from APnews.com by Tom13. And yeah, I personally think all of them probably need to be referred to an ethicist, but sadly, you can't force people to do things that they don't want to do. A lot of people, a lot of people who say, "Oh, Clarence Thomas is the worst thing ever," don't care about any of the blue authoritarianism in the Supreme Court. And how I think one of the justices, I think it was Sotomayor, didn't recuse herself from a case in which she had an active interest in. But, that doesn't really matter to them. They only care because Clarence Thomas is a member of the out-group rather than the in-group. He's black, which, it usually means you're in the in-group. But, when a black person says or does the wrong thing or puts the wrong letter next to their name, suddenly they're in the out-group. And he's a pretty good example of that. And I think we're going to wrap it up there. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.